One really bad argument against bike infrastructure is that it leads to more pollution because taking space away from cars makes traffic worse. This is frustrating because it manages to blame cyclists for pollution caused by motorists, and it's wrong because it completely ignores the basic fact that people make choices about how to get around based on the infrastructure available to them. If you prioritize the speed of cars over the practicality of walking, cycling, and transit, you don't minimize car pollution because everyone gets their destination so fast, you maximize car pollution because no one can get around it any other way. Countless studies show that people in denser urban areas with lots of transportation options pollute less. For bike lanes specifically, a study from Montreal links a 7% increase in the length of the city's bike network to a 2% reduction in transportation emissions.
Another bad argument is that not everyone can ride a bike because of age, disability, or a trip-specific need like carrying something. Bikes actually are very accessible when you consider all of the different variations, from e-bikes to cargo bikes. But that's beside the point because no one advocating for bike lanes thinks that cycling is right for every person or every trip. Lots of people think that cars are synonymous with transportation and everything else is unimportant, with the exception of planes for long distances. But no one sees bikes this way. No one wants to build a city where cycling is the only practical way to get around. Cycling advocates pretty much always support good walkability, robust public transit, making public spaces accessible to things like wheelchairs and mobility scooters. And while they usually want a city where cars play a less central role, most think that cars still have a role to play. That vision sounds a lot better for accessibility than a city where the car is king and where you're a second-class citizen if you can't drive due to age, disability, or money. According to one survey, 29% of Canadians don't personally own a car, including 14% who don't have a car available in their household at all. That study didn't even look at people under 16 who obviously can't drive because, well, it's illegal. Young people have a lot to gain from being able to get to school or their friends' houses without relying on their parents. What's fascinating is that when you look to the Netherlands, where bad bike infrastructure isn't a deterrent, the drop-off in cycling by age happens late, at around age 80. Older adults actually cycle more minutes per day than younger adults. It can't be overstated just how much easier it must be to bike and be active in old age if it's just a continuation of what you've been doing all your life.
Bad argument number 3 against bike infrastructure is that roads are for cars, or it's unfair for drivers if you take any space away from them to give to cyclists. The idea that roads are for cars is nonsensical. Roads existed long before cars, and we still build them even if we didn't have cars. Roads aren't inherently for any particular mode. It's up to cities to decide what the best use of them is. The idea that no space for bikes or transit can ever come at the expense of cars, or else it's unfair, assumes that the current allocation of space is the most fair or optimal one. Why would we assume that? If it's an attack on drivers to take space away from them, why isn't it an attack on cyclists to not give them any space in the first place? That's just status quo bias.
Bad argument number 4 is that we already have bike lanes and no one uses them, in the specific context where the bike routes they're referring to are flawed in an important way. Maybe there's a city or town out there with great bike infrastructure that goes largely unused, but when we hear people point to city bike routes that don't get ridership, there's usually a reason. Usually they lack serious protection and separation from traffic, or they're not connected to a larger network that links people to useful destinations. One example of this is from Get Toronto Moving, a car advocacy group opposing bike lanes on main roads. It highlights a bike lane on Gerrard Street to show downtown routes not being used, but anyone with any amount of urban cycling experience can tell you that this is the lowest kind of bike infrastructure. There's no actual protection from moving cars on the left, just paint, and you have the added problem of getting doored by parked cars on the right. Cyclists understand why some people don't want to bike here, but if your only experience getting around a city is in a car, you see just another bike lane that's not being used. Fortunately, Gerrard has improved moderately since then, with more bollards and less parking.
Bad argument number 5 is that cyclists haven't earned the right to the road by paying gas tax. Lots of studies find that car-specific taxes and fees don't actually cover the cost of roads, and that they're partially funded from general revenues, which cyclists do contribute to. But let's set that aside. If you proposed a fee or tax for cyclists proportional to how much space they take and how much wear they cause on the road, and in return gave cyclists a full, safe, citywide bike network with coverage equal to that of cars, we'd take that deal easily. Remember, a bike takes 5 to 10 times less space than a car, and with its rider weighs 10 to 30 times less. If an average driver pays $600 in gas tax and registration per year, what do we charge cyclists? Something in the ballpark of $60 a year? If that nominal fee earns us the right to real infrastructure, sure.
Bad argument number 6 is that cyclists don't deserve infrastructure because they don't follow the rules of the road. It's really not clear that drivers break the rules any less because there are lots of ways that drivers break the law, like speeding or rolling through a stop sign, that are so common that most people barely even see them as illegal. But setting that aside, if you want cyclists to break the rules less, withholding infrastructure from them is an awful approach. That's how you push them to illegally use the sidewalk or generally act unpredictably when they don't know what to do because the road space isn't made with them in mind. On top of that, if cycling is inherently a dangerous way to get around in your city, then you're basically asking for only risk-taking and adventurous people to engage in it. Build infrastructure that more risk-averse people feel comfortable using, and you'll build a more down-to-earth cycling culture.
Bad argument number 7 is that cycling is just a hobby. It's not real transportation. People who say this have a really skewed view of driving, because driving for recreation and tourism is extremely common. The worst highway congestion happens on long weekends in the summer when people are driving to their cottage, or campground, or other activities like hiking or mountain biking. Setting that aside, it really is true that you get the kind of cycling that you build for. We recently heard someone ask why cyclists in Ottawa always seem kitted up in lycra like they're going to a race. And the answer is that Ottawa does a better job at providing recreational routes than utility ones. Ottawa's meandering river and canal pathways are top-notch, but it doesn't have the same coverage and quality for utility routes that go through neighborhoods and directly connect people's homes to jobs and stores. This means you get more recreational cyclists, from the slow ones to the fast ones in lycra. Something that really stood out to us when we lived in Montreal was the good balance between utility and recreational cyclists.